Good afternoon, members, and welcome back to this afternoon's full council meeting. Please make sure that your devices are muted, everyone, and please make sure that you're using the afternoon meeting invite and putting your questions and comments in there. Okay, members, we're now going to resume with item 8, disposal of land and buildings amendment, and this will be introduced by Stephen Crawford, the strategic lead for property services.
Thank you, Provost. I'm going to start this afternoon with an apology. Appendix 1 in the paper was intended to be a marked up copy of all the changes to the existing policy. This has not happened, but in the final draft. But the link in paragraph 1.1 does give a link to the existing 2013 policy. But everything that's written in Appendix 1 is correct as a proposal. Sorry, is that better? Okay, all right. So let's start again. So basically, what we just said is paragraph 1.1 gives a link to the existing policy, and the appendix to the report is only a partially marked up copy, but everything that's there is the proposed report. So this report is presented at the request of the first meeting of the Strategic Investment Advisory Group, which met for the first time in March. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to update and amend the 2013 disposal of land and buildings policy to reflect the need to prioritise affordable housing delivery with any surplus land and buildings. This amendment better aligns with the agreed council priorities, reflects the principles approved in the financial strategy, and facilitates effective asset management. In summary, the report has identifies that there's currently over 3,000 people or applicants on the Common Housing Register, and this policy amendment will assist. It won't solve, but it will assist in the future delivery of affordable housing. So council's recommended to approve the revised disposal of land and buildings policy. I do know if Claire, the director, wishes to say something in support.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, before we move to questions, I just wanted to pick up on some of the points, or one of the points that was raised this morning about the delivery of affordable housing. And I think just to provide council with reassurance in terms of our good track record, but also our commitments and actions that we've been progressing to ensure the continued delivery. Council will be aware that we have got an excellent track record of delivering affordable housing continually and significantly exceeding the targets that we've set and clearly making a significant impact in terms of our communities across all areas through the delivery of good quality affordable housing. The lead-in times, as you will be aware, for the delivery of housing can be challenging, and because of this we tend to measure achievement of the targets over a 5-year period. We do note the challenge this morning to push to be a wee bit more innovative in our approaches. You will note that relatively recently we exceeded our buyback targets fairly significantly, which is a fantastic achievement for the team. We do continue to seek out all alternative options. We have in the past bought off-the-shelf units. We are seeking those out, but certainly, really struggling. There isn't the same opportunities as there had been previously. Councillors will also be aware of the recent change in terms of our leadership structures. Stephen, in his property role, now takes on responsibility for the housing capital programme and indeed the delivery element of the new build programme. The teams collectively have been working with housing colleagues and indeed our planning team to really do some work in the background, and a number of sites are sort of coming through, so we're confident in terms of the pipeline of sites going forward. And the asset management review, which you will hear more about at Finance and Resources Committee in June, is a really good example of work that's underway to identify other assets that could be reprovisioned into affordable housing within the area. So I think I just really wanted to give council reassurance in terms of our ongoing commitment and the work that is in the background, except that it's maybe not as visible to all of us as you would like. I've had a conversation with Elaine Ritchie in the recess. We will be bringing a more detailed overview to the MOG as requested, and indeed we'll undertake more regular briefings to give councillors ongoing updates in terms of progress.
Thank you very much. Councillor Angus-Forbes, the first question.
Thanks, Provost. On the appendix on number 2, it lists the priority for what we would do with a building that we didn't require. So can I just ask, say for example, there was a village hall that we thought might be suitable for social housing, but equally there was a local community group that were in a position to take it under asset transfer. Am I reading this correctly in that it would go to affordable housing rather than to the community?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Provost. My question related to paragraph 2, I think it is, of the policy. Yes, in Appendix 1 on page 157. It talks about we have a statutory obligation to achieve the best consideration that can reasonably be obtained when disposing of land or buildings. Is best consideration purely about financial return, or do other issues come into consideration as part of that?
If I'll try to answer that. Best consideration, best value is best outcomes. So sometimes you can receive the best outcomes of the direction of council, but not necessarily by selling at the highest price. So best consideration is, with all of the priorities, what's the best thing to do, and that's why we're looking here. The value in any transaction or selling any land, selling it for retail purposes, industrial purposes, or private housing would attract normally a greater price than affordable housing. But what we're here saying is this is a priority for the council. Best consideration would suggest that we would recommend that this is the right thing to do.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Provost. Just following on from what Claire was saying earlier on, and also Councillor Barrett's comments earlier, and his comments in the media recently, from experience, if he's concerned for housing, then that's a sign of a warning that we should take heed. Paragraph 3.5, we talk about, obviously it's getting more difficult to reach our targets. We've set a target 1,050 for 5 years. And we talk about risk of not achieving. I mean, I know it's difficult because, as you say, we work on a 5-year average, but I mean, can we get a measure of what sort of risk is involved? How are we doing at the moment, I suppose, after 2 years?
I mean, where we are at the moment is we don't have a pipeline for 1,050 houses. And what my focus is on building that pipeline in excess of 1,050 to be able to satisfy that plan. I mean, a 5-year target will go up, delivery will go up and down, and certainly where we're focused on is trying to look at very much years 3, 4, 5, potentially 6, see what we can move around. But I mean, we've previously had a strategy of being able to buy off the shelf from private developers due to various things. A lot of the private developers it's a much tighter market, so they're not producing surplus opportunities like that. So those types of things are not available as they've been in the last 2 or 3 years. What we are doing is identifying vacant land. I mean, just prior to the year end, we drew down Scottish Government funding for Balhousie Primary School, for Beechgrove Primary School, so sold those from the General Fund into the HRA. We've now got design teams working on those, bringing forward planning applications, and probably in the next financial year we'll start on site in those. But that was an example of just saying how do we get these things done? But you look at that from the pipeline.
Very quick one. So from what you're saying, when we talk about risk, we're talking about a high risk that we won't achieve?
There's always risk, and I'm not going to be drawn on whether there's a medium risk with anything like this. I mean, all the factors are not in our control, but I think what we can do as officers is keep you updated and put everything in place. And this policy is just a starting point to say, as a default, we've got a vacant site, can we put affordable housing on it? And that's certainly what we plan to do.
Ben Wilson to provide further.
Thank you. I would describe it as a high risk. The figure of 1,000, the target of 1,050 over 5 years, so 210 a year, which, by the way, was an increase from 150 in the previous 5-year local housing strategy. That target of 1,050, that's to be delivered. Good practice for affordable housing supply programs is to really aim to be running at 150%. So actually have a pipeline that's that sized or better, bigger, so that as individual projects encounter just the sort of the headwinds that projects can, you're still able to achieve the output of 1,050. We updated in our annual Strategic Housing Investment Plan report to the Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee last November, I think it was, the snapshot of what the pipeline for affordable housing was, and it had enough to reach the 1,050 and a bit over that, but not as much as we would like. And also we know that some of the sites in there are potentially subject to delays that may result in not achieving the output, which would allow that 1,050. So the measures in the report before you today, certainly I would consider as the housing strategy manager responsible for the overall private and public sector housing land supply and enough to deliver the affordable element of that. I would consider this report and its recommendations would significantly address what I would view as a high risk of not being able to achieve the overall affordable housing new build targets.
Thank you, Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. I've actually got two questions. I thought someone else would come in, so I'll do them one at a time. My first question relates to resources. At the property subcommittee recently, we had Crieff Primary School come to the committee, and that seemed to indicate it took 6 years to assess the site for housing, for affordable housing. My question really is, do we have the resources to turn these round quickly? Because obviously while the building sitting being assessed is deteriorating. So do we have the resources to turn around quickly and say, right, we can't do affordable housing, we'll put it on the market?
I'll speak. I can't speak for what went on before, but certainly I chair the internal the subgroup for delivery of our housing. At the moment, that's estates are on the team, and I've got project managers. We've just recruited a number of affordable housing managers, and there's an absolute this is a corporate priority. My director is measuring me against that delivery, and certainly if I don't think we can resource that, I'll be coming back to her or yourselves for additional resources to do that. Over the last 2 years, that the affordable housing team has gone through a range of changes and vacant and it is now fully resourced. So I'm hoping that we can start to move these things forward and not have buildings lying empty for years. Absolutely.
My second question relates to the supply of land. My understanding is that a lot of the problems we face is the supply of land, hence this policy here coming in. Has any consideration been given to sort of setting aside a sum of money that could acquire land that could, from the general fund, could then be sold to the HRA to be developed and affordable housing put on it, and as a sort of rolling program so that the money comes out of the that fund and goes back in again when it's acquired?
David, will answer that.
I think probably need to break it down slightly, that there's an issue with land supply in some parts of Perth and Kinross, for example, Highland Perthshire, due to the kind of land ownership nature, and that's where we have been intervening, working with landowners and indeed developers to potentially acquire land, because it's the only way that we can bring forward land for housing. Generally, there isn't a shortage of land in terms of its allocation. There might well be infrastructure constraints that need to be put in place to allow that land to become effective. So we need to kind of break it down site by site, looking at what the actual specific constraint is, as opposed to the overall statistics that might indicate overall there's a good supply of land in most of Perth and Kinross. So and that's work that the planning team and the housing strategy team do regularly, is to analyse and to check and to see what actions need to be taken to enable sites to be brought forward.
And will that take a lot of time, or is it fairly quick?
it's done on an ongoing basis. It's not a one-off exercise. That is part of our role is to monitor land supply, housing land supply, and to take action. The big changes are obviously done during the local development plan stage, but that's the kind of allocation of additional land. What we're trying to do is make as much of the land that is currently allocated as effective as possible. But as the report says, some of that is in our control. Some of that is at the vagaries of the market and the house building industry, who do deliver the vast majority of affordable housing.
Thank you, Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Provost. 2 questions, if that's possible. First question is, it's just around this aspect of properties. I absolutely support the asset review. It's just in terms of how the criteria is for properties being declared as surplus. For example, there may be a village hall with an active community group using that village hall, but it's actually a significant cost to the council to allow them to do that. And ultimately, it's just seeking reassurance that that potentially that wouldn't then necessarily enable it to be identified for social housing without the recourse to the community to, for example, purchase it via community asset transfer. And the second observation is that the Scottish, is that okay? Second question is the Scottish Government, my understanding, are due to declare a housing emergency today, and I think the times for identifying around the edges strategic opportunities to do things differently in the future. We must be coming to that point where, you know, as a organisation that is able to grant change of use for land, that there maybe is not an opportunity to strategically purchase that land at favourable rates, possibly even compulsory purchase where it fits in with our strategic plans. But thank you.
If I could certainly answer the first question, in terms of the asset review process that we signed, that was approved in council in January, that was an asset challenge process to be undertaken by the community. Hopefully in June you'll see evidence of the first one we've done in Pitlochry, but it's very much done with the community, trying to identify the community's priorities. And in Pitlochry, one of the key challenges the community have told us about is, and we know, is affordable housing, and hence that's why we're factoring that into the discussion. But certainly not to sell things from under people and not giving somebody adequate facilities for the community.
Okay, thank you, members. Could you invite the Leader of the Council to move the report?
Thanks, Provost. In January 2024, Council approved the Corporate Asset Management Framework. It approved a more strategic approach to managing assets and the creation of a new Strategic Investment Advisory Group, which I, as the Leader of the Council, chair. And I'd like to thank the members of, we've had the first CIAG meeting, and every party within the council's got an equal representation on there, and I think it is the best way to drive things forward in a collegiate manner, and appreciate everybody who's on that board giving up their time, and this is the one of the first outcomes of it. So we're building, as I said, cross-party support and coming up with good initiatives. The Property Asset Management Strategy and Plan approved an asset challenge process, which I have no doubt will over time lead to considerations to dispose of assets that are surplus to requirements. At the CIAG's first meeting in March, officers were requested to review the disposal policy to reflect the opportunity that vacant, I believe surplus properties gives to assisting with our corporate priorities, especially the delivery of affordable housing. This paper seeks approval to update and amend the Council's disposal of land and buildings policy, which was last done in January 2013, to reflect the need to prioritise affordable housing first when options for the Council disposing of land and buildings. The current unmet affordable housing demand is a key priority for all of us in this Council, and this policy will assist in delivering more affordable and social housing. I'm very happy to recommend that the Council support these recommendations. Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Leader to second.
Thank you, Provost, and I very much welcome Mr. Crawford's paper and its recommendation, which reflects the corporate property asset management strategy and plan approved by Council in January. I'd just like to reiterate what Mr. Crawford had just said a few minutes ago. An example of this policy in action is that officers will also be bringing forward an asset report for Pitlochry, and as part of that, look at opportunities for delivering affordable housing in that area to address the rural housing challenges in Highland Perthshire. I'm very happy to second.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Provost. As someone who has long advocated that we prioritise affordable and social housing, I see a little smile there from Ms Mailer. I'm delighted to see this paper being brought forward, and I welcome it very much indeed. So I just want to thank officers and the elected members who are involved in this process for the work that they've done in this, and I look forward to seeing our housing waiting list reducing in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Councillor Peter Barrett.
Thanks, Provost. I'm really grateful to the Director Strategy People and Resource and the Strategic Lead for Property Services for their comments that they made in introducing the paper, particularly with regard to the need for greater transparency and member scrutiny of the Affordable Housing Supply Programme, and also for Stephen's comments regarding establishing a robust new build pipeline, which I think is vital and no simple undertaking, because we can't manage sites out of nowhere. But I think the measures taken in changing the disposal policy are an important first step in achieving that aim. And I really want to ensure that no stone is left unturned in looking for sites and ways of delivering affordable housing and new council houses in our area, whether that's through significant off-the-shelf purchases, whether it's through, collaboration with RSLs on site sharing, so that if they've got sites that they're going to take years to deliver, we can get part of that and accelerate build on that, particularly if our sites are drying up. So I very much welcome the fact that the service is open to innovation, and that we're going to pursue that with greater vigour and, as I say, elected member scrutiny. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor John Rebeck.
I think Councillor Barrett's several attendance at the gym is affecting his ability to switch his microphone off. I don't know how that works, but there you go. But to the point, I actually welcome their support genuinely, and to echo what Councillor Barrett and Councillor McCall have previously said, I think anything we can do to make it easier to increase our stock of affordable housing should be welcomed. And I do think Perth and Kinross Council, currently and historically, are really excellent in playing the hands that they're dealt. Unfortunately, that the hand that's dealt is 8,000 housing stock, as opposed to 18,000 houses at its peak before the family silver was sold off, as it were. And I'm sure we've all got people who contact us who are in desperate need of housing, and we're unable to satisfy that need through no fault of our own as a council. I certainly know that Councillor Massey and I do. And indeed, as an aside, there's several derelict sites in Perth City North which Ian and I would love to see as social housing, unfortunately not owned by the council. So certainly no criticism there, but I do believe that this is a positive step, and I welcome this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rebeck. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Provost. I think we've got a reasonably good record as a council of bringing unused properties back into use. I remember that we had a derelict building in Kinross at Swansacre in the corner, an important part of the High Street, and the council compulsorily purchased it and it was converted into affordable housing, which was excellent. We spoke earlier about the Lade. That was a very important paper. There's a huge tract of land between the Lade and Dunkeld Road, owned by British Rail. I don't know if you've ever walked around or cycled it, but it's a massive piece of land, and it just is laying derelict for donkey's years, very close to the city centre. So these are the areas that we should be looking at to try and develop and turn them into housing for much needed housing for local people.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Provost. I think one of the common themes and the common agreements that we have in the Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee is our dedication to maximise the number of affordable and social houses that are built in Perth and Kinross. And I think that's an admirable stance for all councillors on that committee and in this council. I think our officers do absolutely everything possible to maximise how we get new houses, whether it's repurposing, purchasing back, PKC lets, this new initiative that's highlighted in this paper of converting our own unnecessary or unused properties into affordable housing. And I think that must be the way forward. We have to do this as a council in partnership with both the Scottish Government and UK-wide legislation and funding. And I think that today's declaration of a national housing emergency by the Holyrood Parliament unanimously indicates that people really need to pull together on this. Land is an issue, land banking and land ownership and private ownership is an issue in this country. And it's something that needs to be looked at by the parliaments to be fixed. If we can work in partnership with both parliaments, third sector, RSLs, all these partners are involved in this, then this is a challenge that in Scotland we can overcome, but we can't overcome it by ourselves. And we can't overcome it if we're going to have runs of inflation at 10, 12%, because that has really kicked the housing market at the moment because of construction costs and availability of labour. So there's lots of challenges ahead of us. We have an affordable housing MOG that's going to again be set up to discuss this matter, to take it forward so that there's input from all the groups across the council, because this is a really important matter that is not party political in my view. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor McEwen, and I think I would just echo those remarks and those of everyone else who spoke in the debate. This is a significant opportunity for us as a council to excel some rural housing in some of our most in-need communities, and thus enable children to be lifted out of poverty, enable the economy to be maximised, and to give everyone the opportunities that they require. Councillor Lane, do you wish to say anything in summing up?
No, thank you. I think it's all been said.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, can we agree the paper? Thank you very much. Members, item 9 is Bell's Sports Centre, and David Littlejohn, the Strategic Lead for Economy, Development and Planning, is going to introduce this report.
Live Active Leisure is seeking the Council's agreement to withdraw service provision from Bell Sports Centre with effect from 31st August this year. And this report sets out the background to the request and updates members on how services will be provided elsewhere. A further report will be brought forward for consideration later this year, identifying options for the future of Bell Sports Centre, the dome of which, together with the attached original changing rooms, is now a Category B listed building. The driver for this request is the Leisure Assets Review approved by the Council in January 2024. That report set out an analysis of usage of Bells, its running costs, operating loss, ongoing maintenance and repair costs, and necessary energy efficiency measures. The report also highlighted the impact of the most recent flood event from both surface water and water ingress below foundation level, as well as the discovery of RAC. So in February 2024, the LAL board made a decision in principle not to reinstate Bells and to relocate services to Dewars Centre. Under the terms of the service level agreement between the Council and LAL, the formal agreement of the Council is now needed. and officers recommend that that agreement is given. Finally, I should add there is an inaccuracy in the report in the annex at paragraph 2.2. The wording at that paragraph should read, there are workforce implications for LAL related to this report, and all relevant staff have been advised that roles are at risk. The company continues to be proactive to mitigate the implications on the workforce, including redeployment and retraining. So apologies for that inaccuracy in the report. I'm joined today by Paul Cromwell, and between myself, Paul and Stephen, we are delighted to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Bailey Hearn, you have two questions if you just want to ask them both at the same time.
Thank you very much, Provost. My first question is on paragraph 4.7 with regards to the Scottish Water plans to do the work outside, which obviously doesn't just include the Bell Sports Centre, it also protects the play area next door and other parts close to that area. And you're stating there that you've been in discussions. Is it likely when they find out that there is nobody using the sports centre that they are going to delay or pull out from those works? And the second question is with regards to RAC. Obviously, the building is going to be empty. That is going to have to be replaced, regardless of whatever use that building turns into. And if it's a listed building, it's going to go into something. Is that work going to start straight away, or is there going to be a delay in the RAC, which then forces a delay in doing anything else with that building? Thank you.
I'll answer the Scottish Water question first. Scottish Water wrote to me in March saying that they were aware of the discussions of Bells. It was in their investment plan, as I've written, £5 to £6 million with a range of drainage improvements. They were aware of the listing, and they've confirmed to us that if the building was listed, they would still proceed with those works. And I've written back to them saying, you know, we're at council today, and for the avoidance of doubt, we are looking at options, and please ensure that that's still in the plans, because the building is listed, and as a responsibility, we've got a responsibility for looking at those options, and I didn't want them to withdraw that funding. So that's if that answers your first question.
So it says in the report 12 to 18 months. When did that start? And when's the work likely to go ahead?
They told me 12 to 18 months about one month ago. And if I can answer the second question on RAC, we've had, like as we've done with all our schools and buildings, we've had our structural engineers review the RAC. The RAC in those areas is deemed critical. It is included in the area that's listed. But at the moment, given the uncertainty in the future, we are doing no work. You know, Lal and ourselves have taken those areas out to take away the risk, so they're out of operation, and they are the changing areas, and we're doing no investment on that until we run through the options, as we're doing, as we said in the report, and bring back to council what are we doing with the building in the longer run. So the risk is not there to any occupant, because there's no occupants of those areas, but we're doing no investment and no preparatory works.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Provost. There's been a lot of media attention, of course, with the decisions surrounding Bells and PH2O. And if you can bear with me, I'm trying to pull two things together here, but it's obviously from groups who are going to be affected not only by the closure of Bells, but by the changes that will happen when PH2O comes into force. We had a meeting, as you say, in January. PH2O is something I think across the chamber want to see progressed. We've got revised designs coming in August, and hopefully they're approved. We may be able to kickstart this to get moving. So my first question is related that the concept of closing the 3 sports facilities and building them into one is still ongoing. But tied into that is matters regarding Bells. At the moment the decision was taken to close Bells and move everything, the fitness gym, into Dewars. There are several other options there which have been picked up by the media. If we were to take any of those and I'll pick option 6 as an example for a moment, just purely as an example, which is to retain the fitness gym at Bells. All of them will involve capital expenditure on Bells to make it viable. So my question is coming back to this, taking PH2O as being the future, and I think 2028 is a figure that people have been talking about. Inevitably, any money spent on Bells now, it's going to be closed eventually anyway. So the point I'm trying to make is that any capital expenditure now would effectively be a waste of money, because you're spending capital to keep something going for maybe 4 years, and then close it because we're going ahead with the concept of PH2O. Is that, I've explained that well, but I'm trying to bring two things together, if you can.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, obviously there's a number of options in the options appraisal that's been completed, and one of the options is to reinstate, or option 6, which is putting fitness back into Bells. There's a range of challenges we have here, many of which have been drawn out as part of the leisure asset review that you all looked at and agreed on in January. But one of the significant aspects we still have is the uninsured loss, and in terms of that risk. So that's probably the significant risk we have there, as well as the time scale that you're talking about, Bob, in terms of between now and when PH2O is ready. Now, we've obviously had we've had 3 significant floods now in the 3 years, or 2 floods affecting 2 venues catastrophically from 2020 and 2023. We no longer can attract typical comprehensive insurance cover. So one of the risks you have is this: you could say, well, let's invest that money back into Bells, which is something that the company isn't keen to do for a variety of reasons, some of which have already been mentioned. But obviously the risk you have there is that we've had 2 significant floods now in 3 years. And if that comes again, then again, in terms of that financial prudence, I think one would suggest that that wasn't probably a great idea. So there's a range of other issues there that, as I say, have already been brought out in terms of the strategic direction going forward, which was laid out in the leisure asset review. There's also just that for us as a company in terms of that financial resilience and the other financial risk that we're also managing.
Okay,
hope that answers your question.
A supplementary, if it's on topic and in line with the paper.
I'm just trying to bring into a nutshell that any money that's spent on Bells now, say for 4 or 5 years, whatever it might be, effectively Bells is going to be closed anyway, because when PH2O comes on stream, effectively the capital we've spent will be wasted effectively.
Yes, council agreed to the consolidation of the 3 venues into one. Probably, I think the wording was probably at the Perth Leisure Pool Dewar site.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Provost. My question is around the recommendations as set out at 2.1, and in particular the 4th bullet point, which says instructs officers to bring forward further proposals for Bells to council later in 2024. Can I just have clarification there that we're instructing officers to look at any and all potential uses of Bells, not necessarily for sport or leisure purposes, in terms of this recommendation? Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. All use. Thank you. Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you for the paper. My question is perhaps a little bit more mundane. I'm particularly interested in the accessibility for members of the public and other groups in terms of accessing changing rooms, toilets, and particular changing places toilet. I know that there are very few the changing places toilets in particular in Perth itself in the city centre, and so I have had constituents inquiries about this. So if you give me some assurance around that, would be great. Thank you.
I can answer that. LA will provide facilities until the end of the summer, and I'm currently working with my colleagues to say post that, when the building transfers back to the council, what level of provision we have on the North Inch. And again, that's for the residents that've spoken to you, but we do have every Saturday morning we've got 400 people for a park run, and there's a huge need for facilities then.
Thank you, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Provost. My question's about the strategic implications, and basically on the points of poverty, cost of living, mental and physical well-being. I was just wondering, is there a feel for how many of our people within our communities will be adversely affected by the closure of the facilities? And I give an instance, indoor bowling. And are we doing anything to mitigate their difficulties in accessing appropriate alternative facilities?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, obviously we've engaged with the groups that are impacted, and I've attended meetings to explain the rationale and look at any possible ways that we can work with groups going forward. And that offer has been put out to the indoor bowling group that you mentioned there. And we will continue to try and work with them going forward. We've obviously done the quality impact assessments in terms of the changes that we're proposing from bells and the impact as well that it has on viewers. And that's something that we're obviously, for disability groups, we're obviously ensuring that we do everything we possibly can to relocate those priority groups that are potentially impacted. A big part of the work that we're doing, and it is contained within the report, is to really understand and take a refreshed look, I suppose, in terms of the wider school estate and the facilities we have in the wider school estate in terms of games halls or sports halls, and how we can map and manage that far more strategically going forward between ourselves and the council. And this is work that's been ongoing, and it's absolutely going to require flexibility and a new way of thinking, probably from ourselves, council, as well as some of the clubs and groups, in terms of flexibility around changing days and times that they would typically come. There's going to have to be that level of discussion and change going forward if we are to try and mitigate the impact of bells closing by utilising the wider school estate. But these streams of work are ongoing now and active.
Thank you very much. Bailey Ahern, please.
Thank you very much. And this is probably a question for Paul. It's the fact that it's an uninsurable building at the moment. Have you had any indication from insurers that if the Scottish Water flood mitigation works was carried out, that the building then becomes insurable? Because that's going to have an impact on what we can do as a council if the building's taken back over again, because we're still going to be trying to work with an uninsurable building.
I don't actually. We don't have that information. It's fairly new information in terms of the plans from Scottish Water. What I can say is, after 3 years of not having any significant or any surface water flooding at Perth Leisure Pool, we still can't attract typical comprehensive flood insurance. So it needs time, and it needs, quite rightly, as you said, significant intervention in terms of the wider infrastructure. But I haven't got an answer to that question right now.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Stewart.
Thanks, Provost. It was actually on the point that Bailey Ahern's just raised. In 4.6, we say that the venue is regularly flooded from below its foundations, and in 4.7, we say that the Scottish Waterworks will provide a 1 in 30 year plus climate change level of protection from out of sewer flooding. So does the Scottish Water protection from out of sewer flooding, does that completely eliminate the flooding from below foundations? Is it the same thing, or are these two different types of flooding?
I'm not going to stand up here and say that I'm a flood expert in any way, but obviously bells, and anybody that knows bells understands that we can be impacted by storms and flooding quite frequently. But generally speaking, we know what that pattern is, and we've, over the years, I think it's quoted as saying we've had a number of flooding incidents over the last 7 to 10 years, but it's only been the last 3 or the last 2 that have been major. So we would generally know the pattern of water from internal, where it comes up, which areas of the venue it impacts, and we've improved the resilience around these areas to try and ensure that it doesn't damage the fabric of the building or sporting areas. What I can say is that obviously the flood in 2020 and 2023 went beyond that. So it's a mixture of both. It's surface water as well as drainage capacity, in my view. But like I say, I'm not going to hold myself up as a professional pluvial modeller or flood expert.
Thank you. Leader of the council to move the report.
Thanks, Provost. And again, I'll be brief. This report asks Council to approve a formal request from Live Active Leisure to withdraw delivery of services from Bells Sports Centre from August 2024. As a result of the flooding in October 2023, Live Active Leisure have been and are in the process of relocating services to Dewars and elsewhere across the Perth Education Estate. On 22nd January 2024, Council approved several recommendations from a review of leisure assets, including consolidation of the future Perth City provision onto one site. The PH2O report is due back to Council later this summer. The report does note the recent Historic Environment Scotland listing of the Bells Centre, and I look forward to officers bringing forward proposals for Bells, including consultation later in 2024. I recommend that the Council approves the recommendations in this report.
Thank you very much. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Provost. For me, this decision to approve Live Active Leisure's formal request to cease operations from Bells in just 3 months' time is sad, very sad indeed, but unfortunately necessary in all the circumstances. There is no need for me to restate the financial realities set out clearly in this paper. It's clear that the sums just don't add up, and when you overlay the well-understood repeat flood risk factor, it's clear that relocation of services to Dewars site, together with ongoing work to find viable alternative uses for Bells, alongside LAL's engagement with local clubs and users of Bells, is the best way forward from here. Therefore, I second the motion.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments on the paper? If there are, Councillor Leishman.
Thanks very much, Provost. I'd like to start by thanking the residents who took the time to contact me about Bells Sports Centre closing. And I'll say here what I said to those residents who feel so passionately about Bells. And I make absolutely no apology for making this political. The fabric of our society is being systematically removed, cut by cut. And unless there is a change to how we are funded, then we will continue to get papers like this one. That's the reality. Because of how we are funded, we have become nothing more than docile agents of central government. That started with Margaret Thatcher and her 11-year war on local government. Her desire, don't worry, you're not the only one who's going to be criticised. Her desire to curtail the power of councils didn't stop at Labour-controlled authorities either. Rate capping that restricted the spending of councils even divided some Conservative-run councils, and some radical Labour authorities decided to adopt the stance of not setting a rate in rebellion to Thatcher's centralisation of power. And as unpalatable as it is for those in the SNP that like to describe themselves as progressives, or dare I say even socialist in their thinking, it's time that they wake up and see the similarities of what Thatcher did to local government and the pain their own parties inflicted on councils during their time in charge at Holyrood. It's a lovely spring day today, but let's not forget the harsh winter we had, pouring over various savings and cuts during the budget process. Dealing with the dire financial position we are in was tough, but when we were effectively strong-armed into implementing the central government-desired council tax freeze, things became even tougher. And when the SNP government doubled down and threatened us by saying councils that didn't accept the freeze wouldn't get the extra cash from Westminster unless we did their bidding, that was contemptible. There's nothing progressive or socialist in bullying local authorities. It only leads to pain felt by communities as services are cut and facilities close.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Provost. This won't be political at all, should be surprised to hear. Having read this report, I'm sure members will appreciate why option 1 was chosen by the board. I'm sure my 2 fellow councillors who joined me on the board will agree that the decision was a difficult one and one taken reluctantly after full discussion. In doing so, we had in mind the leisure asset review and the proposed PH2O concept. As seen, option one has the greatest impact on various groups and users, and the relocation of the fitness gym will see an end to indoor bowling. Furthermore, there was no deputation at the council meeting on the 22nd January, nor any communication to members, and officers were not instructed to consider any options for indoor bowling, an indoor bowling facility within the new PH20. Bowlers have raised their concerns, I'm sure, to members in addition to myself and through the media. And as a follow-on from this, I have discussed the situation with Mr. Cromwell on a couple of occasions to see if any alternative venue exists within the LAL estate. Sadly, there is not. Subsequently, at a meeting arranged by Councillor Lang with Councillor Duff and Mr. Glenn, we discussed the situation and whether there was any option to help the bowlers. Could we see beyond the statistics and help, especially considering the health and wellbeing benefits and social interaction that indoor bowling brings? I'd like to thank Councillor Duff, Mr. Glenn and Councillor Lang for taking the time to discuss these matters. Everyone can be assured, indoor bowlers as well, that nothing fell on deaf ears and all appreciated the concerns raised. However, we are in the real world and we have to accept the financial challenges that face us in creating a new, modern, energy-efficient sports facility, allowing for the limited resources that we have available. And it is those statistics which have to be recognised if PH20 is to be a success. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Smith for the final comment before Councillor Ling sums up.
Thank you very much, Provost. I think, like a lot of people in here, would be really disappointed when we lose Bell Sports Centre, because it really is part of Perth. I have used it in many occasions, and I think most of the people will feel the same way. I just hope in the future that they can look into such things as the use of the building. I have been away recently with walking football teams, etc., to Glasgow, and the facilities through there are quite fantastic, in the sense that hope that they look into the future and maybe they could convert the hall into an artificial pitch, the whole area, which would allow one winter and summer availability for people to play in their games, etc. We would not then need to take up a lot of facilities in the new area, because obviously you would have your pitches there. Look at somewhere like McDermott Park, look at the North East campus. They are booming when it comes to these artificial ones. So I just hope in the future that they look towards things like this, innovative movements, and we can make Perth back to where it was. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Leader.
Thanks, Provost. I'd just like to sum up by saying, yeah, I think everybody across the chamber will be sad about this, but it's a financial and obviously a weatherological necessity that we move away from here. I would like to say that I was speaking to another elected member today whose fitness regime seems to be working quicker than Councillor Barrett's. And being a candidate for Westminster, it seems to leafletting seems to be doing well. It's unfortunate that he has not realised we're back in Perth and Kinross Council looking after the people of Perth and Kinross, and still think he's out in the campaign trail. So thank you.
Okay, right, members, can we agree?
Excuse me, Provost, I think I deserve the right to reply to that.
A very, very, very quick one, Councillor Leishman.
No, I resent that, and I would appreciate an apology off the leader of the council, because my performance in these chambers, I am dedicated to the people in Perth City North and all 12 wards, and I think that comment was cheap, and to be honest, it was pretty nasty, and I expect an apology, and if I don't, I think it's a measure of the leader of the council.
Okay, members, it's been a long day. We're nearly there. We're literally in the final few minutes. Mr. Leader, could you withdraw your specific
I will withdraw if the Councillor Leishman doesn't take it in the way that it was intended.
Thank you. Right. Can we?
Well, after the meeting, then I'm happy to speak with the leader and see exactly what manner it was intended in, because to me it seemed very, very clear.
I think let's take this offline afterwards. Okay. The comments have been withdrawn. Can we agree the paper, members? Thank you very much. Members, item 10 is revisions to standing orders. Members will have seen an email circulated when we returned that Councillor John Duff has a couple of tweaks, which I'll let him speak to in a second once Mr. Hendry has just outlined very briefly the proposals.
Thanks, Provost. Just to provide context around this. This proposal to the change to Standing Order 19.9 is to bring contributions to routine committees in line with the deputations procedure for members of the public. I just want to clarify that in addition to the wording that you have on the agenda, that the change will also confirm that members of the relevant committee will have the chance to ask the local member any questions similar to deputation. The other reason for bringing this is to provide clarity that this standing order does not apply to quasi-judicial meetings other than the Planning and Placemaking Committee, as this was never the intention of the original wording, and that's what we've set out in the new wording in relation to those particular meetings. Thanks.
Thank you. Because there's going to be an amendment, I suppose I will technically move the original position. Mr. Leader, are you happy to second the original thing that's on the paper? Say yes.
I'll move that, yes. I've got kind of lost there with that, but yeah.
Wonderful, yes. Thank you. Right, Councillor Duff, would you like to briefly outline the few changes you've outlined?
Thank you. A couple of points. Firstly, this is not an amendment to what was there originally. It's an addition. Hopefully it provides some clarification on what I think is the intention of the change, that as well as not participating in the questioning and discussion regarding officers or whatever, that people who or councillors who give them deputations shouldn't be able then to go and sit with members of the committee either. The bit at the bottom of the first paragraph where it lists the 4 committees, it was just to make clear that the reasons they're excluded from the standing order is because members are not permitted to make deputations at these ones and for no other reason. And the last bit was there is another standing order at 6.4 which allows councillors to sit with committees as an observer, and I felt we needed a cross-reference to this standing order at 19.9 just to make sure that councillors were aware that they can't give a deputation and then use 6.4 to sit with the committee. That was all. Just to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duff. Bailey Hearn, you're formally seconding this, aren't you?
I'm just formally seconding. There's no point in talking about it.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to incorporate. Leader of the Council, you're happy to incorporate?
Yes.
Thank you. Members are well happy to agree those very sensible revisions. Thank you. Or there's a point of clarification from Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, just to clarify the part that says that the convener has the right to refuse or accept these deputations, because that have been refused in the past, and obviously people have been accepted recently. Does the convener need to clarify why they are refusing or accepting a deputation from a non-committee member?
It would be a matter of courtesy, and I suggest that we will take up any more detailed revisions to the standing orders in due course in that bipartisan way we were discussing earlier on. Okay, right. Thank you very much, members. Item 11, update to the scheme of administration. Are we all content to agree the proposed changes to the scheme? Thank you. Members, you happy to note at item 12, the elected member briefing notes have been issued since the 6th of March. Thank you very much, members. That concludes today's business. Thank you. Have a safe journey home.